Welcome to Shiny Side Out with Dave.
And Mickey!
Wow, I'm going to turn that down a bit. That was loud. Goodness me. We're on WZZR. That's broadcasting out of Kentucky. We're in Australia, though. And this is Revolution Radio. On, if you want to find the website and the chat room, it's www.revolution.radio, where it's more than just old school radio. So jump in to the chat room if you can. This is show number 386.
680 and 300.
I really like how we developed that. That's nice. It's on air. That is, the radio is on air, online, and on your smart device. So grab an app to listen anywhere or listen at home on a Grace tabletop digital radio. If you missed Solaris' show, it was great, as it always is. She has fantastic guests. It's a non-stop roller coaster of thrills and spills. No, actually, that's a quote from The Simpsons. She had Madeline Rudy on today, and I talk about world affairs, but when I tuned in, my goodness, how awesome was that show? Like, if you just tuned in now to our show and you don't know who Solaris is, it's Solaris Blue Raven, and you need to subscribe to the archives of Freedom Slips. And in Australia, in Australian dollars, I think it's like $5.95. And it fluctuates a little bit because it's in US dollars, and I just have an auto payment thing going through to Nighthawk, the owner of the station, so I can get access to not just Solaris' shows or our shows, but all the host shows that are on Revolution Radio. And Mackie and I have been doing this. This is our 8th year, is that right, Mackie?
I think that's about right. We are in the 8th year.
In
correct.
the 8th year. And because of that, that is a terrible segue. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land. Where I live, it's the Darkinjung. And where Mackie lives, it is.
Yeah, it's the Daruk people. And the only reason we're doing it is because it's the 8th year, Dave.
And because we're on radio, and because, we're in the middle of the 8th year. No, it's the thing that we do. And we hope to forever pay our respects to elders past, present, and future. And do you know what? They've been able to look after this wonderful land that we live in. And I don't think, well, in my best efforts, I try to connect with it, go barefoot, even though that's extremely dangerous, clearly. If you're not from here, if you say you're an American and you consider Australians fortunate to make it to adulthood with all of the dangerous creatures we have, well, it's just something that I like to do. I like to be barefoot every once in a while, the majority of the time, to be honest, and it reminds me that beneath our feet and our houses and the concrete and the roads and all the buildings we have are lands which have had stories passed down for at least, and in my estimation, 240,000 generations. And, if we could do half as good a job as they've done, well, we should be proud of ourselves. But you know what? I hesitate to quantify how truly poorly we're actually looking after this planet, to be honest. We plunder it. That's what we do. We plunder it and we claw it about. And we build stuff on top of it without truly having an understanding for the actual place that we live. And look, there's a lot of people around the world that don't know who the traditional owners of their land are, or whether they were named, or whether they had a people that lived in a specific area to them where they live and where their house is. Like, that's crazy. If you don't know, look it up. I mean, really, look it up. Mackie, how are you doing?
That's my name. I'm good. Excellent. No, I am. It's been an interesting week, and you do what you can, right? You work, and then you work some more, and then when you thought you finished working, you do a bit more work. But it's okay.
You start another shift when you get home, right?
That's what happens. Here in Australia, it's been a bit cooler, but this week it's been getting warmer yet again. We're coming out of winter. It's not as cold for this time of the year as it normally is. I think a little bit warmer, but again, that's neither here nor there. It's not indicative of climate change. But Dave, since you asked me, there are a few things I wanted to mention. Around climate change, I like to say some things. No. There's actually a couple of interesting things. There's a secret Cold War base in Greenland. And it's abandoned. It's old, right? It's no longer used. It's buried deep under the Greenland ice. And it has drifted hundreds of meters towards the edge of the ice cap since it was built at the height of the Cold War. Camp Century is called. It's still 100 kilometers from the edge, about 62 miles. So it will take many years before it reaches the critical point, said one of the Danish scientists involved in studying it. But it is the melting that causes some of that movement. Interestingly as well, underneath the Greenland ice sheet, they have found more than 50 hidden lakes. So that's something else that wasn't taken into consideration in the modeling. Mm-hmm. Okay, there are liquid water lakes under the Greenland ice. Only 4 had previously been detected. Antarctica, interestingly, hides some 470 lakes beneath its ice, or at least that's how many we've found so far. And in fact, the largest down south, Lake Vostok, is 250 kilometers long. In contrast, the biggest subglacial lake in Greenland is just, and I say just advisedly, 6 kilometers long. That's still a lot of water under Greenland ice sheet. Okay, so now as Dave said, and I want to say it again: if Greenland's ice were to melt, Greenland's ice only, it would raise the global ocean level by 7 meters. No, I'm not making that up. That's coming here from the scientific websites. 7 meters.
Good luck with that. Meki, what's left on the planet after a sea level rise of 7 meters?
Well, good question. And the answer is not a lot. Because for the most part, we are a coastal species. A lot of our biggest cities, not all of them, of course, but a lot of our biggest cities are at the coast, right on the coast, in fact, or on rivers and lakes. And rivers will be just as affected as other places. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't just stop there, right, Dave? I mean, once the water rises, right, there's a whole bunch of other considerations to take into account here. So the sea level rises. Okay, 7 meters, 5 meters, let's call it that. But there you got the tidal surges, which are affected. So 7 meters that's the new normal, right? The new sea level. And then you have to take into consideration the tidal surges.
It would be the new low tide.
Water mark.
Right?
The new low water mark. Correct,
yeah.
The low tide. Exactly. So you would have, at high tide, of course, it would go higher. That's and Greenland apparently also hides a huge impact crater, in case you didn't know.
Sure
but it's interesting, right? So there's a lot of stuff here related. There's a couple other things I want to share with you. And this is very interesting. Now, July, the month we've just left behind us, is named after the emperor, well, by his grandnephew.
Julius.
Julius, that's right. He's a god. If we'll give him a month, and I'm a god, so I get a month. So we got July and August here, because we're 2 gods. Thank you very much. No, July is marginally the warmest month on record. A preliminary analysis of global temperature data for July suggests it may have marginally become the warmest month on record. The warmest. Figures from the first 29 days of a month in which many countries had heat waves are on a par or slightly higher than a record set in July 2016. So this wasn't like July 1812. No, this was just 3 years ago when we had the hottest month, and now, if a mere 3 years later, again in July, because July, of course, in the northern hemisphere is a summer month, we have
another new record.
Another new record, right? Well, 3 years. And if you, I've got here, I don't know, I'm going to share it in the chat room if I can. There's a really interesting graph here. It goes from 1850 to 2020, and it shows the increase, the steady increase in global temperatures. And this is the source for that is the Copernicus Climate Change Service. Scientists say it's the latest sign that Earth is experiencing an unprecedented warming. But Dave, it's okay. You know why?
Why's that?
I'll tell you. I'll tell you why.
Tell me why.
Okay. And the reason it's okay is because the American, I think Donald just told the scientists to shut up.
Yeah, so that's what he did. Yeah.
We know it's gonna be all right. Now, there's another interesting thing here. The UK's 10 warmest years ever have all occurred since 2002.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Mm-hmm.
And apparently we've got 12 years to save the Earth. Well, no, it's more like 18 months. 18 months. So this is not me talking.
And that was 3 years ago. Yeah.
I know, right? No, this is not me talking. This is actually what's happening. There's a very interesting link that you can find on BBC News as well. It's a globe. It's a spinning globe. So it's actually like a 3D representation of the globe, and it shows you, on there. I'm going to put that into the chat as well. You can actually see where you are in Australia here. It'll be hotter by 2 degrees for the most part. There are other areas where it's going to be 0 to 1 degrees, and there's others where there's no change at all. The no change at all is in fact in the middle of Central Asia. There's very little change expected there, and then some areas around the Arctic Circle near the Great Lakes. There's some areas where temperature change is not expected to happen too much, and then a patch of the Amazon as well in South America but we don't think temperatures are going to increase dramatically. But the rest of the world, so Africa, most of Europe, will at least get 1 to 2 degrees hotter. The Middle East, North Africa, who else is there? Middle East, North Africa. Yeah, they're expected to go well above 2 degrees in temperature increases. But yeah, so it's a thing. It's happening, right? And there's really not much we can do about that anymore. So it's get ready for change. That's all I can say to you. Get ready for change is my advice to you. Any other thoughts on climate change?
Yeah, I do actually, because all change is good change, right? Russia, Mekki, those giant bombing aircraft that they've got. They're absolutely ginormous, right? They're the Russian equivalent to the B-52. Well, they're using those heavily modified versions of those to put out those wildfires that are burning in the Arctic.
Was that right? Okay.
The tundra is on fire.
No, look, I knew that. I didn't realize they had... these are Tupolevs, right? They have repurposed?
Yeah, that's right. And they're super massive, right? And they can't skim a lake and suck up water. They've got to land, be filled, and they have 40 tons of water.
Yep.
And they then fly over the zone, and they let it go, and it becomes a controlled airspace. I was talking to our own RFS people about the solution that they're using there, and is there any hope that we could get some good aircraft here in Australia to do it, not just the Elvis helicopter that we have. But anyway, it's not just one. Thank you very much. No, it's. So I watched the documentary on RT yesterday about them using these aircraft, and they're so huge. Imagine B-52s, and they're lined up. They got, I think, 3 of them in service. So there's always one filling, one's flying to, and one's at the scene. So yeah, it's like the Thunderbirds, Mekki. Do you know what I'm saying? When you see heavy machinery being used to combat something on a giant scale, To me,
Yes.
that's just the Thunderbirds, right? And we're at that
Yes.
point.
Yep.
That, who knew the Arctic could just burst into flames, right? Because it
Yep.
hasn't before. But who knew it
Well-
was a thing?
Oh, you're right. It's scary.
It,
I mean, there's a lot of flammable
mindset
gases.
change. Yeah, oh, that's true.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. But the whole change, this change thing that I entered into, when that was my segue, is it's bigger than you think. So no one in their modelling thought, oh, the Arctic's going to just burst into flames, right? It's going to get so hot, because that seems like it's way down the track. Well, it's now. It's not 2090 or 2290 or 2500 for that matter. It's now. It's that dry. It's that dry, that hot, and the conditions are rife. And they're talking about, was it 14 million hectares have already burnt?
That sounds about right.
Yeah. So this is in that same ballpark, right? That you mentioned last week, Mickey. And I'm remembering your phrasing around this. White reflects, all the darker colours absorb and keep heat. So the green is to be honest, the only reason plants are green is because they reflect green, because they absorb all the other energy in the white light. The only thing they don't want to use is green, believe it or not, and that's reflected off. If this was a different makeup of atmosphere, and we had high UV, the plants would be purple. Did you know that? The plants would have to give off the most, plentiful of those wavelengths to stay cool. It's a very similar thing to what green plants are doing. It's not just because they photosynthesize and that's the chemical reaction and that's the color that's given off. No, it's because they're absorbing everything else. That's what they need. So, Becky, that whole thing, you start to blacken the earth. Black absorbs way more than the green. Well, the plants did. And can it recover? And the question is that if it burns significantly enough, it won't recover. It's like the deforestation in what was the place you mentioned? South America?
Amazon?
Yeah, the Amazon. So once you've cleared, you hit a tipping point. Once you've cleared a significant amount of forest, no planting of forest is going to make it come back. It doesn't come back to what it was. So you end up with, it tips the balance, you end up with like middle Australia, right? At some point that could have been covered in trees. We don't know. Just don't know.
So to explain this more in detail. So once climate change, or once a climate is changing, once you've reached a tipping point and things start to change and have behave differently to to what you're used to, it'll find a new equilibrium. I mean, you have an equilibrium now. That's what your normal is. Your new normal, this and that. So whatever is going to happen going forward, there will be a new normal. That's okay, right? And the ecosystems will change. And people always talk about the destruction of the ecosystem. It's not really true unless you irradiate everything and the sun bathes us in cosmic radiation and whatnot, all these wonderful things. You don't destroy the ecosystem. The system always changes. Like we said before, 98% of all species have already died on this planet. What we have now is a lot less. The survivors, if you will, right? So the ecosystem changes. It doesn't get destroyed. It changes, and with it, everything else will change. And the key thing is that the question is, will we change with it? The answer is, well, can we? Maybe, maybe not. And it's really up to us and our ingenuity to live in that new world, Dave, right?
Yeah, look, when that's raised, right, is what are we going to be doing? Well, we'll have to adapt. Otherwise, we're done for. If we just go, it's all too hard, I can't do anything. Mackie, a 7-metre sea level rise even at 2-meter sea level rise, we're going to see not just refugees, we're going to see urgent and en masse construction to try and cater for the moving of infrastructure. And I mean the infrastructure, the life-giving infrastructure, which is fresh water, sewage treatment, our infrastructure for transportation has to all be adjusted and changed to be able to suit the new height of the sea level. Could you imagine if in Australia the eastern coast is basically going to turn into an archipelago, right? Just a mountain chain of islands. Look, Japan seems like they've been able to live on an island really well, very mountainous islands. I think we have to take some lessons from them. The big flat expanses that we're used to for lovely farming land, guess what? They were underwater once, right? That's the reason why they're flat. They were, in a very shallow sea. That's just what happens. The sediments build up, right? So I think at some point we're going to start to see mass development on this island chain mountain range that we've got to the best of our abilities. I think
it's interesting. You're right.
Around the world, at the moment, people are happy to buy and sell, oceanfront property and do right. This with what's it called when you just throw something to the wind?
Abandoned.
Yeah, with abandonment. With abandonment. So it's sort of beyond me. And when the government isn't aligned and saying, what, it's a real big problem. Like Jacinta, from New Zealand, the Prime Minister in New Zealand said, what, this is a really big problem. And she's the only one. All the other ones, no, what problem? Where? And they look behind them on the wall. It doesn't say climb up there, does it?
So it is too hard to tackle. And it'll be political suicide for any politician that would really want to try to tackle it because of the power that is still with the industrial complex, right? But consider something else. If we do have a 2, 3, 5, 7 meter rise in sea levels and all that wonderful stuff,
new opportunities.
We will see new opportunities. That certain nations will cease to exist.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me say this again. Certain nations will cease to exist. Millions, hundreds of millions of people will be displaced.
Bangladesh is gone.
Bangladesh, all the low-lying areas will be gone, by large chunks of Europe. Florida, Holland, all gone.
Yeah. Texas too, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Interestingly, for the last 20,000 years, that's exactly what we've seen all along. Obviously, we were in the grips of an ice age 20,000 years ago, and a lot of the water was landlocked. So it wasn't sitting on top of the ocean, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right, people, anybody who's just doing, I love it. There's a little meme, a little bit of information. All of a sudden, everything's a hoax. So there's this guy who shows there's this bucket of water, right? And
that's right.
There's water, and then you've got 50 ice cubes in it. Okay, and lo and behold, the sea level doesn't change once the ice is all melted. Of course, it doesn't, because the volume displacement, is roughly the same. Not quite. I mean, ice displaces slightly more volume than liquid water, but it's negligible.
And because it floats slightly above the water, that evens out at the end.
Yeah, correct. So that's exactly. There's a bit on top, which isn't actually submerged, and therefore anyway. But my point is, yes, that's part of the picture. It's a small part of the picture. What we worry about here is landlocked ice, as Dave pointed out, I think, several times in the past. Once that melts, the sea levels will rise significantly. That's what happened in the last ice age. So a lot of ice was landlocked. In large parts of the northern hemisphere, Asia, Europe, North America, they're all under the ice, under glaciers. And then we think there was an event, potentially impact on the Indian Ocean, which led to a massive melting event.
Mm-hmm.
This was like a geothermal reaction that was caused by the potential asteroid as it hit the Earth, and all the flood myths and all that, I think, go back to that, or a result of that particular event, and a lot of water was released into the oceans, which significantly raised the sea levels. And we are yet again to experience a sea level rise, not quite as sudden and catastrophic, I think, as the impact of that particular asteroid or whatever hit us.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly catastrophic enough. And what is worse? We don't want to. We don't want to deal with it. We the people that can don't want it, and the people that want it can't.
That's right.
Right?
I love that. That's great. I'm going to use that.
Do please. The Pacific Island nations, they know it's coming. Right? They're losing islands. They're losing islands today. They are losing islands. Listen, people, they are losing them. Coastal areas are being eroded. We have a lot more beach erosion than we used to have in the olden days. If you live on an island that's fairly low-lying, that's no good. Find yourself some higher ground.
Now, remember that they used to have freshwater aquifers, which are now becoming salt water. As the sea level rises, it inundates into those. Yep.
No, there are no percentages in actually solving this problem. I'll tell you why. Whenever there's something happens, you have to look at the percentages. Who's gaining, who's losing, why does it make sense, why doesn't it make sense? That anything you look at in life will come down to a profit or profit loss kind of scenario, right?
Okay, yeah, right.
And, right, with me, so I mean 10, 12, whoops.
Oh, there we go.
Whoops, too late. So anyway, that particular event had a whole bunch of profit loss analysis done to it by me. And for me, it's very clear as to who is to blame. Doesn't matter. But always profit and loss. And this is the same thing. So what are the percentages of changing anything in this scenario here for the politicians? Well, none. There aren't any. Because the politicians themselves, being part of the lower levels of the elite, if you will, are going to be okay. They're going to be okay, especially if they're sitting, right? The sitting politician is going to be okay. Mm-hmm. But even so, the majority of the political class should be okay as well. Certainly, any ex-presidents, any ex-prime ministers, any royalty, anyone like that is going to be okay. So why upset the apple cart, and risk votes and risk not being in power anymore? Because they get supported by industry. Industry holds a lot of the purse strings, and they give donations to get people re-elected. Have campaigns on TV and radio and on the internet and all these wonderful things.
No,
that costs a lot of money.
They don't influence
government.
government.
That doesn't happen. I'm sorry, I misspoke. And in Australia, there are others as well, but in Australia specifically, it's coal, or the coal industry that holds a lot of the power. But it's not just the coal industry; it's any industry. You get the pharmaceutical industry in the States. You got the military-industrial complex overall. You've got the banking sector. There's a whole bunch of people that don't see any percentages in making any changes because they are going to be okay. All right? Now, maybe not all of them, but the vast majority of the people that are quite well off and rich, I want to say it here, are going to be okay. They're going to find a way to survive, and not just survive, they're going to thrive. They're going to do really, really well because they can prepare. They've got the money, and trust me, they've been preparing for a long time, right, for these eventualities. They could even go off planet. Who the hell knows, right? My point is, there are no percentages in getting this fixed. There's only upside for letting this play out. Again, take a look at Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor. America didn't want to join World War II. When I say America, I'm talking about the American people. This just wasn't very popular. In fact, any Eurocentric conflict in World War II was seen as a Eurocentric conflict at that time. Wasn't really to the Americans' liking. That was the reason they withdrew from international affairs after World War I. They didn't join the League of Nations. Woodrow Wilson said, nah, not interested. Thank you very much. And Monroe, back in the 19th century, said, America for the Americans, let the Europeans do what they want. That was the prevailing attitude after World War I. Fair enough, right? Now, the money people could see a lot of money being made, though, in war, right? And they thought, hey, maybe we should, these are good percentages. Again, coming back to the percentages, we can make some good margin of this. So, how do we get the American people into the war? That was the question. I want to say here, that was being asked in dark paneled, boardrooms, with rich mahogany and leather chairs, sipping expensive whiskeys and, smoking even more expensive cigars.
I'm there.
And the answer, right? I know you're there, right? And the answer is, well, we need something that triggers this. And whether or not Pearl Harbor was a deliberate thing or they simply let it happen, it happened, right? And we do know that the Americans had quite significant forewarning of the event, of the Pearl Harbor event, but if you let it happen, so if you destroyed the Japanese fleet before it attacked Pearl Harbor, good for you, that's nice, but it doesn't really do much else for you. But if you have Pearl Harbor destroyed, then you have an angry nation, and all of a sudden entry into World War II become a lot easier. So that they let it happen. So my point here is, if they let it play out, this climate change thing, right? You don't have to engineer a virus. You don't have to, have these massive detention camps and death camps, and you don't even need a war to reduce the world's population, which is, again, Agenda 21 is still on the cards, I believe. You just let this climate change things play out. It might take a little longer, but you know what? I don't think it'll take a lot longer because all our modeling is wrong. Instead of decades, I think we have years of things before things start to get really dicey, right? Years, not decades, not hundreds of years, certainly. But I think the decades proposition is out the window as well, right? Because our modeling just can't factor in all of the things. I do believe that there are computers or machines, let's call them, out there that have the capacity to do the accurate modeling. I do believe that there are groups, entities, what are you going to call it, in possession of technology that is well ahead, of course, of what we have.
I agree with that.
Right? Yeah. Look, the thing is this. So if you let it play out, Dave, and of course there'll be tens of millions of people that will die in flood-related issues, that tsunamis might become more common. But then you've got the knock-on effect of the scarcity of good drinking water, waterborne diseases in general, really. And then you've the
cholera
issues. Yeah, cholera, the conflict that arises out of massive population shifts, right? That is never a peaceful thing. So if you got to tens or even hundreds of millions of people moving about all at once.
My goodness, imagine that.
Forget about it. If you think Syria was bad, the 1 million refugees out of Syria, this it's completely not entirely unprecedented in our history, but certainly unprecedented in the last 2,000 years. So all of a sudden we'll be faced with something that is significantly disruptive, or significantly enough disruptive to change the landscape of the world.
You need to have stable government and governance through this transition. Otherwise, it'll all fall apart. But
you see, and I think it will. And I don't want it to fall apart. But I think because our entire system is so carefully balanced, it's such a fragile, beautiful thing. If you think about the world economy and how everything hangs together, people like to think of it as a very robust thing, maybe like a brick. People like to think of it as a brick. It's actually a snowflake. The world is a snowflake, and there's so many interdependencies, so many things that have to be just so and just right, and for it all to go smoothly. If you disrupt our supply chain, if you disrupt our agricultural produce, if you disrupt fishing, if you disrupt any of those things, in fact, if the bees were to die out, we'd be screwed. The human race would not face extinction. It wouldn't. But we would be thrown back right into the Stone Age.
Mackie, can you think about the amount of shipping that would be would be down the toilet, right? If there was an impact in any of the oceans. Imagine how many ships would be lost. It'd be, tens of thousands of ships. And where are they going to put the effort to move the goods around? So, see what I'm saying? It's so simple.
The global economy would cease to exist. It would be a local economy. Whatever you have where you are, that's it.
Wow.
Okay, that's what you will have. There's nothing else. It used to take years, certainly months, but years to go around the world. Months and months. Once people knew where they were going and what the best route was, it still took months and months to get from Europe to Australia. Okay, we're not talking overnight flight here. Okay, we're talking fairly significant and hazardous sea journeys. Okay, now, in order to understand the global trade, you really have to see a container port, a significant container port like Rotterdam, Singapore, Shanghai, any place like that. If you've seen one of those, you understand the extent of global trade. And I mean, I go to Singapore a lot, and I spend a lot of time on the East Coast, just sitting at the food stalls at the beach there. It's quite nice. But what you do get is this view into Indonesia. It's a bit, you can actually, well, you couldn't quite swim there, but you can see Indonesia. But between you and Indonesia are hundreds and hundreds of container ships. They're all anchored off Singapore, waiting to be loaded up to go different places. And it's the most efficient container port in the world. And if you see it and the size of it, you understand just how much world trade there is. Right? That's just one of the ports. Okay, just one. There are many, many other ports very similar to it in size as well that ship containers of goods. And you've seen those container ships, right? They are massive. I mean, the containers look like tiny little Lego blocks once they're stacked high up. But they are massive containers.
Yeah, that's right.
So, Dave, you're right. It's a significant thing to think about that, and you cannot, once the supply chain is disrupted and once global trade is no longer possible, people will become more estranged. People will lose their global identity. They won't be as educated, I don't think. They won't understand maybe as much because survival is now the main priority.
Yes.
And if you happen to have a certain crop in your area or certain animals, that's what you're going to eat, and that's what you're going to kill. That's it. There won't be any strange and exotic things in your life anymore. Okay, and things like the Silk Road or the Spice Road or all these trade routes they'll have to be reimagined and reignited for global trade to yet become another thing again. But in the meantime, a lot of people will lose their lives. The population will shrink significantly. Our medical institutions will falter. Okay, our medicines, they're not all made here in Australia or in America. Your medicine, it's made all over the world, and it's being shipped all over the world,
and predominantly in India. So, Mekhi,
yeah.
I always come back to this same thought. At what point of a disaster do people, what's the trigger point that people no longer go to work during a disaster? And I don't mean the people in the hospital. I don't mean the police or the military, right? I mean everybody else, Joe Normal, right? And what is the trigger point? My thoughts have always been 3 meals. If you don't have the ability to feed your family, that's when you go feral. It doesn't take much.
No, that's correct.
I mean, it's really a short trip. It's a short trip from sitting there watching your big screen TV with all the electricity you ever wanted, right? And to fighting your neighbour for the last can of beans at the store.
Yeah.
Because
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
So that's why I think that's why I get in this path of a massive sea level rise, even if it happened over 10 years. Even in the next 10 years, if we can keep our fingers crossed that Greenland ice cube isn't going to melt, right? If it does melt and it takes 10 years or 15 years, that's 10 or 15 years that it takes for all of our civilization to cease what we're doing now. It'll be doing something else. Within the US, there's, you would hope that it doesn't flood into Kansas through Texas, right? You hope that you don't lose your farming land to salt water. Here, because I know there's a lot of good high altitude places within the US, and it'll look different, but it's still viable. But Bangladesh, that's gone. Most of India gone.
Yeah.
China's got a huge mountain range pretty much all around the eastern and southern coastlines, and rivers that go up, and that looks like it would survive pretty well. England's pretty gone. Australia's mostly just an island chain. There's a whole bunch of the changes that we would be likely to see, because we were only estimating 2 meters.
Yeah.
At 2 meters, what changes, and that's enough. They didn't pause, just pause the game at 2 meters of sea level rise, and we could sort of still get on. But any higher, that's going to be a little too difficult to deal with. Imagine the influx of people from some other place, like Mickey said at the top of the story. Climate refugees. Well, this is flood refugees, but think about, 1 billion people moving around on the planet.
Yeah.
I mean, you just can't cope with it. And I think that's, well, without getting too morbid, there would be a significant challenge we all would have to face then, right?
Imagine tens of thousands of boats hitting the Australian coast. You think we got a boat problem now?
Mm-hmm.
You wait. So I'll give you a simple example, Dave, here, right? This is something I mentioned earlier. So Jakarta, Indonesia's capital.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
10 million people. 10 million people live in Jakarta. It's not very far from Australia.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as distances go globally. Now, that particular city, at least the northern part of it, is sinking at a rate of 25 centimeters a year. Some parts of the city, 25 centimeters a year, it's sinking.
Mm-hmm.
In 4 years, it'll sink a meter.
Mm.
Now, this dramatic rate is due to a combination of excessive groundwater extraction, causing subsidence, as well as a sea level rise caused by climate change, right? A 32-kilometer seawall and 17 artificial islands are being built to protect that city at a cost of $40 billion. However, experts say it's just a stopgap measure. It's a $40 billion stopgap measure.
Mm.
Okay? Unless they stop all groundwater extraction, by 2050, it's going to be completely meaningless, all the work they're doing. On the same token, New York City, 8 million people, right? More than 8 million people.
Mm-hmm.
Sea level rise will completely inundate like 2 meters, 3 meters, 4 meters, forget 7 meters.
Yeah.
Okay? It will completely
Venice.
New York.
Instead of New York, it'll be called New Venice.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So these are real things. These are not things that they're happening today. So do you think that Indonesia would spend $40 billion to protect Jakarta if it wasn't actually sinking? Yeah. Well, no. The answer is no. They wouldn't, because they're not stupid. Okay. we are looking at some significant things. And no one, like I said, there are no percentages in fixing this. There are no percentages in fixing this. Well, Mackie, that's very cynical. Oh, really? You think? we have no interest in fixing it. The people that couldn't.
Well, Mackie, if it was only going to rise 1 meter, I think everyone would throw some money at it.
Yeah.
If it was going to top off at 1 meter rise, no one would really care. Life is normal. We can do some stuff to fix it. Don't anyone worry about it. Yeah? Mm-hmm. 2 meters? Well, we could do something about it. But, we're starting getting into ground where, mind the pun, starting getting into deep water with this, right? It's maybe a little too big, a little too costly to do anything about it. 7 meters, doesn't exist, can't see it. My head's in the sand, don't care. As long as we are alive out of the other end of it, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not civilization is going to continue. We're not going to. There won't be voting areas that will sustain itself. Right. The amount of change is too significant. It wouldn't make sense to throw any money at it, because it's going to change so significantly that you're not going to be able to deal with that amount of change. Like, you don't want the source. Right? If you want this to happen, you really don't. You really don't want it to happen. Yeah. If we could put, maybe we install a massive, super massive refrigeration unit over that ice and keep it there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Or maybe Nestle goes there and just starts bottling it all and stores it somewhere else on the planet. Up at, somewhere nice, like Denver, Colorado. To store all the water up there in bottles.
Yeah.
And it can sell it to us slowly.
That's right. That's right.
The only problem is you can't let it go into the ocean. So we can't consume the water, I suppose, because then we would just it would end up back in the water cycle, and voila, still the same result.
What is that? No, look, again, not a doom and gloom. No, I really don't want to be doom and gloom, but we have to be realistic about these things and prepare ourselves for it. Become, I don't know, enable yourself. Don't be a sheep, right? Don't be a sideliner. Oh, it's not really going to affect me. Oh, it will. Oh, it will. And if it doesn't affect you, it'll affect your children. And if you don't have children, well then, fair enough. Good for you. But it's not a good thing. There's one other thing I wanted to quickly mention before the I know, right? And this is a first, Dave. This is a first. An artificial intelligence system is, or should be, I should say, recognized as the inventor of 2 ideas in patents filed on its behalf, a team of academics says. The AI has designed interlocking food containers that are easy for robots to grasp and a warning light that flashes in a rhythm that is hard to ignore. Patents offices insist innovations are attributed to humans to avoid legal complications that would arise if corporate inventorship were recognized. The academics say this is outdated, and it could see patent offices refusing to sign any intellectual property rights for AI-generated creations. Okay. As a result, 2 professors from the University of Surrey have teamed up with the Missouri-based inventor of Dabus AI to file patents in the system's name with the relevant authorities in the UK, Europe, and the US. Dabus, which is the system, was previously best known for creating surreal art, thanks to the way noise is mixed into its neural networks to help generate unusual ideas. Unlike some machine learning systems, Dabus has not been trained to solve particular problems. Instead, it seeks to devise and develop new ideas, what is traditionally considered the mental part of the inventive act, according to creator Stephen Thaler. Are we worried, Dave? Remember how last week we said, a week before, our kids should choose jobs that are creative? That require the human creative input rather than, rote things that could be automated and, and robotized.
Well, they found a way. They found the way to dead end that idea, didn't they? That's now a cul-de-sac, right? Yeah. So we can sunset any idea of remaining a sentient species after AI is created. We'll have nothing left to do.
There'll be nothing left.
We can't even play chess in the park because they'll win.
Yep.
Can't write music. Oh, they write music. Can't come up with new ideas. No.
We don't need you for new ideas. We got the machine. Silence.
Well,
all hail robot masters and transmission.
I love the leader. But look, the very
I love him more.
Pepsi. I'm almost lost for words, Mickey. This is, well, we've just sunset ourselves, haven't we? We are. We have rationalized ourselves out of a niche in the ecological food chain, if you will. It's no longer necessary. What country were those scientists from? Damn you to hell.
Oh, well. There you go. To hell, I say.
Well, look, the sooner the AI can leave the planet and to consider this planet boring and go off and examine the universe, right? All the better, I reckon. And we can hack into it and say go to Mars first, because that's where Elon's going to be sitting there going ha ha ha, no AI here, right? And then they're going to show up.
But again,
funny.
It's the few that will benefit here. The vast majority of us, the people that aren't super rich, are going to be left behind, even in this endeavor here, right? We're out. Thank you very much. You still need controllers. You still need the human element at some point, somewhere, right? Because it's just the way it is. But it's going to be the really, really rich that are going to pull all the strings, and we will just become a subclass.
If we're lucky.
Just like chocolates. Yeah.
Yeah.
If we're lucky.
Yeah.
If we're lucky.
Look, honestly, we'd be hoping if AI took over tomorrow, right? I'm going to go straight up to Greenland with a magnifying glass and see if I can melt it quicker.
Yeah. Good
Like,
luck with that.
well, that's our only escape, right? That's our, we've got this thing ready to go. It could destroy enough power that AI had nothing. Just saying. That's got to be its only flaw, right?
No, I don't disagree. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think the music should be coming any moment now. But unless we're talking over the music,
that does happen actually. That's our only escape, right? That's our, we've got this thing ready. I still can't hear any music yet, but look, let's be presumptuous. Let's pretend the music has started. So, we'll be right back after the short break. Take take the time for maybe a glass of water and hit the donate button on the side of the station's website. Still no water.
Stay hydrated. Stay hydrated.
Oh yeah, that's right. It's very warm over there, isn't it? So yeah, and I hope.
I think that's what I'm gonna. It's my sign off now. Stay hydrated. It's my new sign.
Be good to your mother. All right, just for all intents and purposes, we'll assume the break has begun. Take care, everyone. We'll see you after a short break. There's the music. See ya. Okay. I presume the advertisements have finished. Apologies for the delay. But you're back with David Mackey's Shiny Side Out on freedomslips.com on the #1 listener-supported talk radio on the net. So push the donate button or subscribe to the archives for only $5 a month. I believe it's $5.95 or whatever exchange rate is delivering me my Australian dollars subscription. I'd like to say hello to all of the new listeners we have today. We are glad, pleased, more appreciative of you being on board. So whether you follow, like, subscribe or otherwise, we intend to make this journey an easy one for you. And we're halfway through show number 386.
680 and 300.
100.
Nice.
Yeah. Now, there was I just wanted to quickly say something. China has apparently massed some troops on the Hong Kong border in case the riots don't settle down. Maybe they're going to take over from that crowd control. And the other one was, real quick, that NASA flew a special ground-penetrating radar plane in a zigzag motion up the Ridgecrest Valley, which is a volcano farm. And I think that they're trying to get some more data on those, well, because of all the quakes that are occurring, on a massive underground chamber which may be filling with magma. I'm not trying to be alarmist here, I'm just saying NASA don't normally fly that plane around, and they became awfully concerned when the 6.4, then 7.1, and the other 9,000 quakes that occurred in that first week, and now it's down to 2,000 a week. But just reminding everyone that the Kilauea volcano was doing about 2,000 quakes a week. So just trying to put that into perspective for you so you understand what it means. That's it, Mackie?
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought there'd be more wisdom pouring out of you. No, there's one other thing I wanted to mention, which I just saw in a science magazine recently. Japanese scientists have now decided to splice human and animal DNA together to create animal-human hybrids.
Monkey humans!
Master of the race. Yeah, monkey humans. Monkey-winged humans. That's what you need. Go, fly, my pretties, fly! Yeah, what could possibly go wrong with this? Oh.
Hang on.
Nothing?
Continue the research.
Oh, well, back to the drawing board. No, look, I mean, Einstein, I think, said this, right? Just because we have to do something, just because we can do something, rather, doesn't mean we have to do it. He was referring to nuclear power, atomic weapons in his time. Again, the nuclear energy doesn't care how you use it. You can use it to power a city, or you can use that same energy to turn that city into radioactive cinders, if you so desire.
You can radiate the Pacific Ocean as much as you like.
If you like to,
TEPCO.
right?
Just looking at you, TEPCO.
I know, right? No, but why do we think it's a good idea? Why do we think it's a good idea to combine human and animal DNA? So it's like, why do we?
That can't go wrong.
No, I think it's a good idea. I think we should do more of it. Now, of course.
But don't we sound like the Anunnaki now?
I was just going to say that.
Oh.
I was just going to say. Now imagine a society, a civilization technologically more advanced than us, already having done that.
Mm.
All of a sudden, all those mythical and mystical creatures of yore that we have heard about in school and in our fairy tales become a lot more plausible. I know, right? They become a lot more plausible. It's because all of a sudden, we know that tech exists. So that's the thing. It's a statement of fact. We could do it if we wanted to. We could create a flying horse. I don't know how aerodynamic it would be, but we could do it. It's a thing that could be done.
Yeah.
We could create, a griffin or a.
What's the man bull? What's?
Yeah. We could a minotaur.
A minotaur. That's right. Yep.
Yeah, or any of the other fantastical creatures we see in the mythologies. Now, it stands to reason that if we could do that, another civilization that existed before us could have done so already.
Mm-hmm.
And see, this is where it becomes all very interesting. I believe that this civilization is still with us to some extent, or civilizations potentially, right? Yes, the surface-dwelling civilization that we once had 15, 20,000 years ago, about 12,000 years ago it ended, right, with the event we described in the hypothesis. But it certainly lasted for a while. That civilization would have lasted probably, from 20,000 to about 12,000 years ago, potentially, maybe longer. And they may have very well achieved all those things. And the inner Earth civilizations, which we're going to discuss in a moment here, would also have achieved that level of competence. But do we really think that we are ready and able to go ahead and create these fantastical creatures? And why should we do that? Just because we can? What if we created, a cat-human hybrid, or an elephant-human hybrid, as it were? Why? What would that be a good thing? Would that be a bad thing? I mean, it's hard to say. Having said that, of course, Dave, we ourselves are that hybrid.
Mm-hmm.
I believe very strongly that we are. I believe very strongly we've been interfered with as well. And the stories that we have, harking back to the beginning of what we would like to call the dawn of our civilization, again, going back to Sumer and the cuneiform texts there. And like you said, the artworks that existed, Dave. You see these fantastic creatures in the artwork, right? Right next to normal creatures, like creatures we would expect to exist today. So, I think it's already been said and done. There is nothing new under the sun, but we are not mature enough as a civilization. Us, I'm talking about right now here, right? We're not mature enough to conduct these experiments and have them go well. They will go poorly indeed. Mm-hmm. Okay? Just remember, I was the first to support you, human animals.
Oh, with all the bad press I've been giving AI, I'm going to be on the list.
Right?
you know what I'm saying? It's like who are the first people the robots are going to go after? The guys from Boston Dynamics with the hockey sticks, right? They're gone.
They're gone, baby. That's going to be a purge. First night, First, Boston Dynamics, Boston who? There's no Boston anymore. But there's nothing to do with that. All Boston references are no longer in existence.
So Mickey, that you make a great case here, and what I'm reminded, all the visualization that I'm getting is, the crocodile-headed, the bird-headed Egyptian glyphs. Yeah? There's a crocodile-headed person, dude, there, right? There's a bird-headed dude. There's a whole bunch of different creatures. Why can't it have been possible? If we're thinking of trying to do it now, like the guy who is going to recreate dinosaurs.
Yeah. From
DNA using chickens. Because they're just the modern day dinosaur, believe it or not. He's really close, and I've been watching his TED Talks. He's so close now to actually doing it that it isn't funny. It's let's just say it's next year, right? When he's going to start. Because it's that close. They've been working the logistics about how to go about it, what genes to touch, blah blah blah. Mackie, why is it not possible where, if we're thinking about it now, that you're right, some other, ancient race has done this already, and we're the result. Yeah. I'm agreeing with you.
Mm-hmm. No, completely. You're right. That's absolutely the case. Of course. And that's that. I mean, again, we have to look at these stories in a new light, right? We have to look at these stories that we, classify as fairy tales and fantastical tales, be it Arabian Nights or the tales of the Brothers Grimm. Now, they didn't invent them; they just wrote them down. These were tales that were told by the people in the area, handed down by generations. Not just, but any. I mean, the Chinese mythologies and fairy tales as well, Indian fairy tales. It's a plethora.
Dragons.
There you go. Exactly, right? Exactly. Now, I do believe that dragons are probably a natural species to this planet rather than a created one, but, I mean, who knows? Having said all of that, it stands to reason that this kind of technology, this high level of technology, would have survived unless we're talking a planet-destroying catastrophe, would have destroyed anything that would come its way. If you're at that level of technology, and I believe that we were spacefaring at some point, even on the surface of the planet, and we've forgotten that, and now we are seeing, I believe we're seen as the poor cousins, the third world country on the surface, whereas the civilizations under the sea
under the sea
and underground have in fact retained all that knowledge. So that's actually an interesting parallel in our history in the last 2,000 years for something like that. So the Roman Empire collapsed, I want to say about 580, roughly, right? I mean, there's a whole bunch of things like the Visigoths and the Goths came and invaded from the north and took Rome, pretty much, right? So Rome was taken. It's believed that lead poisoning might have,
contributed really heavily towards their insanity. Yes.
Yeah, no pun intended, right? Really heavily, but it's certainly there's. So the lead poisoning is a real thing, and make no mistake, all plumbing in Rome was lead pipes, and that's the word plum. Pluvius means lead in Latin. That's why it's called plumbing these days. Anyway, the point is that so the Roman Empire collapsed, right? Now it didn't mean that civilization ended, though. But what happened was that Europe, for the most part, entered into what was known as the Dark Ages, which lasted for about 1,000 years. Now, Dark Ages, what does that mean? Well, what it meant was that all the road building and the use of concrete and make no mistake here, the Romans were excellent engineers. They were, fantastic engineers, road builders and everything, right? Now, all that knowledge was lost, including, advanced agriculture and all those wonderful things, seafaring. There's a whole bunch of stuff that was completely lost to the rest of Europe simply because the supply chain collapsed. Mm-hmm. Okay, and all of a sudden, all that knowledge became secondary to survival. However, that knowledge and more survived in the East, in what is now the Middle East, if you will, and even further China and India. So those nations remained civilized by in comparison to the rest of Europe, and only with the conquest of Constantinople in 1476 by the Ottoman Turks, did that knowledge flood back into Europe and ignite, if you will, the Renaissance, the rebirth. So all these scholars which had holed up in Constantinople and were still very much, very much in touch with all the sciences and the scientific advancements and all the Oriental nations as well, which had kept that knowledge, they were all still around. It's just Europe that was cut off. Europe was completely cut off from that. So what happened is all these scientists that, and learned people, engineers, they fled out of Asia Minor into Europe and took with them a whole bunch of knowledge, right? Knowledge that had been preserved in the East, and not just in Istanbul or, there, but in Baghdad, further afield, like I said, in China and India. And so the knowledge came flooding back. And to this day, Roman concrete is better than any of the concrete we produce. We believe it maybe the limestone, maybe the volcanic rock, who knows, but it's better than our concrete. Okay, much better. Which also, of course, is my pet peeve. If you had concrete, like superior concrete like that, Dave, why on earth would you hew out 1,000-ton blocks of stone?
You wouldn't. You just pour it, right? You could pour a 1,000 ton.
It makes no sense.
I know.
That's a sidestep here, right? So, but anyway. So all of a sudden, we have a parallel to something I think happened on a much grander scale for the surface of the planet. So some 15,000, 20,000 years ago, we had, I believe, spaceflight. I believe we had high civilizations, a global civilization, in fact, I believe.
Like today, but with one language.
With one language. In fact, I think it might have been telepathy, but it might be a bridge too far for some people. That's fine. And I do believe that, it wasn't a civilization like we have today. It wasn't the same kind of thing. So I don't think they necessarily were burning fossil fuel, right? They're talking about this special substance that they put in the Vimanas, Orite chalco, as well. And we believe it might be white gold powder mixed with mercury, because mercury is mentioned. We know that translates, but there's one word. Red mercury, yep, there's one word, or chalco, which we can't translate. We don't know what it means, really. I mean, there's speculations, of course. But the point here is that we have these accounts of Vimanas, flying machines. We have accounts of how they're fueled and powered, and they're different kinds. And we have the chariots in the Chinese ancient tales as well. So there are many stories around a high-tech civilization. Of course, in the olden days, pre-technology, people would have assumed that's just all magic, right? And godlike powers, which, fair enough. And if you look at us today, in the context of 2,000 years ago, the people that lived 2,000 years ago would look at us today and go, wow, clearly you are gods, right? I mean, in my room, in my house, in my study, I'm looking at a big screen computer. I've got a laptop here on my table. I've got a little plasma lamp on the side. I've got a whole, bunch of books behind me. I've got more books in front of me. There's a clock on the wall. I've got my mobile phone, all right. There's a headset on my ears, right? And then I've got a microphone here as well. And I've got an ionizer in my room to keep the air nice and clear. And I've got a representation of the Milky Way that has been laser etched into a glass globe. My brother gave it to me on my desk as well. So I've got a whole bunch of stuff here that if you came from 2,000 years ago, I've got a radio as well, like an old vacuum tube radio my grandfather...
And Mecky, you've got an old map of the world.
I do. I have an old map here of the world, and I've got a new map of the world. So there's a whole bunch of stuff in my study, that if you take somebody, pluck them from 2,000 years ago, you dump them in my study, and you go, whoa! Not to mention it doesn't smell like horse in my house, right? Or cow, for that matter. But then glass. I've got glass on one of our bookshelves, like a glass door. So my point here is that we looking at this is just what we know. We just I've got a telescope here as well. Now we just look at it. That's life. That's what we have, and I'm used to it. Thank you very much. Nothing amazing about that. To a person 2,000 years ago, this would be astounding. To a person 1,000 years ago, it would be astounding. To a person 500 years ago, it would be astounding. To a person 100 years ago, it would be amazing. It wouldn't be like God type thing, but they go, wow, you have some seriously cool stuff.
Well, the computer to 100 years ago would be amazing.
Yeah, 100%. So the point I'm trying to make here is that once that knowledge is lost, right, people have to claw their way back, and it seems as though over the intervening, millennia and centuries, we had help. There's always the stories of the teachers that come. There's Kukulkan, or Quetzalcoatl he's called in South America. Yeah. And there are other stories of teachers coming and trying to help us along, right? And it's interesting, in a really ancient flood myths talk about people coming back and teaching us about, how to make beer, in fact. It's one of my favorite. But not just that. Agriculture wasn't something we developed, was something apparently that was given to us. Now, if I had invented agriculture, if I was a Sumerian, I just invented agriculture, look at me. I'd take credit for it. I would. But no, they didn't. They didn't take credit for it. They said it was given to them, right? It was something they had gods. So these gods, right, again, anthropomorphic, and this is the problem here, Dave. They all look like us.
That's right.
Albeit potentially much bigger. It's just a very strange thing for me to fathom, especially if you look at it from an extraterrestrial point of view. Again, I'll make the case, and then I want to share with you, and I want you to do that, Dave, to start at least, the Nimitz, a special case of a USO. For me, this is one of the most amazing underwater UFO cases I've ever heard of and ever had documented, but I'll get you to talk about that in a second.
I've got it on page 17, but that doesn't matter.
No, we're gone well beyond that, my friend. We actually finished last week because the trusting bit is really not that. No, alien abduction and seduction. We need to do that. So you're right. That's page number 18. The other one you don't worry about, but we definitely need alien abduction and seduction. You're quite right. Sorry, my bad. No, but the point is that we have these human-like gods, teachers, come and give us these things. It makes sense if they're here already. It makes a lot more sense that they're here already, and it would make a lot more sense because they are human-looking, right? Like I said before, and I will say it again until I'm blue in the face, any alien species, or visitor species, if that's preferred, that looks like us, coming from another solar system, is the most unlikely event in my mind, to ever occur, unless there was a seeding event. Okay, if there was a seeding event, okay, no problem, got it understood. But if there wasn't, and they developed completely independently, the human form would not be the most logical form for them to take. Okay, it's a complete coincidence that we look the way we do, in my opinion. But be that as it may, we have been interfered with, right? We've been told that, and I believe the human race, and I'm saying this very loosely here, has been on this planet for a long time indeed, a very long time, much longer than we give it credence. And in fact, like Dave, like we've predicted again and again over the last 8 years, and certainly in our lives before that, the marker or the milestone for the human experience is moved further and further back into the past. Not only that, this is by regular science here, right? Not only that, but also we said this as well for the last 8 years. We will find that the human race, the human species, is a lot more complex and multivariate than we had thought initially. And all of our predictions are borne out. Now, are we geniuses? Well, probably. No, I'm just kidding. No, the thing is, all we employ is good deductive reasoning. Mm-hmm. We look at the world and we apply common sense, right? And we look at the evidence as it presents itself, no matter which form it comes in. And you have to follow the evidence. You have to follow it wherever it leads you. And us, it led to make these statements. The human race is a lot more multivariate than we thought, and we are getting evidence for that every single day. There's now, I think, about 5 or 6 Homo sapien races, if you will, not different species, because we interbred with Neanderthal, we interbred with Denisovan, we interbred with Homo floresiensis, okay, and we interbred with a couple others. We don't even know who they are. Okay, so not a different species. They're all Homo sapiens. Otherwise, we couldn't interbreed and have viable children. Would not happen. Like a donkey and a horse. A mule cannot reproduce. Anyway, point is that we've always said this. We've also said the human experience is much further in the past than we are taught in school. And that is also borne out. It's being pushed back further and further, both from an archaeological as well as from a paleontological point of view. So the archaeology goes further and further back in time. We now make allowances for human beings to have settlements much sooner than we thought. Look at Göbekli Tepe, right? 12,000 years ago. 12,000, okay? Predates any civilization we have any record of anywhere. Well, clearly it's there. You can't make it go away, like you can do some of the evidence. It's there. It is there. We just don't have any record. We have no idea. But something obviously built Göbekli Tepe, for example, right? But there are other points of evidence here as well. What about all these things they found in the mine shafts, Dave? When people were still doing all the digging.
Oh, you mean those unqualified people that...
Yeah, that's right.
That found things.
Right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But look, there were hundreds of these cases, right? Back in the day, and hundreds of artifacts found. Even if only one artifact, is a true artifact in strata hundreds of millions of years old, that's enough.
Yeah.
Because a silver bowl or a copper bowl or a mortar pestle doesn't just form itself. It has to be made. A chain doesn't make itself. It has to be made by someone, right? So let's be very clear what we're talking about here. So, yeah, so my point is that the civilization is indeed very, very old on this planet. And for the most part, I think we have probably coexisted, surface and underground for the most part, until, obviously this catastrophic event. And we are now living through the proverbial dark ages, Dave, right? And it is, and maybe disclosure when it comes is about that. We will learn yet again about our entire history, okay? About the entire history of, and I'm going to say this loosely again, the human race, the entire history of the human race, going right back. Right back to the beginning. But anyway, so that's setting the scene as to why we're doing this particular show cycle and what it means. Because it always irked me that all these extraterrestrials are so humanoid. How is that possible? Now, in fact, the next bit here that Dave is going to share with us will make that even more pertinent.
So that's alien abduction and seduction? Yeah, excellent. Perfect. The UFO sightings that are combined with abductions are even more amazing. There are all kinds of reports of humans who have been abducted, and not always bad things happen to them. Of course, I like the one report where a guy had a UFO sighting and then these two beautiful women came down, one Asian looking and one European looking, and both of them seduced him. Then he could never find any evidence of them. They just all of a sudden mysteriously left somehow. And the one piece of evidence he did find is one of their hairs. He got their hairs genetically tested, and it turned out to have some very interesting anomalies on it. It had some very rare DNA on it. So, some of the sightings are very nice. They are followed by an abduction and a seduction. Many others are not so nice. A UFO sighting starts. Often the UFO is seen maybe flying around. Then all of a sudden there is a white light or some kind of paralyzing light that just gets shined where the person can't move at all. They are often floated directly out of their bed, sometimes through hard structures like walls and windows, or the ceiling and the roof. It's like a green or white beam comes in, and they literally float straight through their roof into the UFO. Then, sometimes women have reported being impregnated. Many times people have reported having painful things done to them. Scoop marks comes to mind as well. Many times people report lots of aliens looking at them and talking to them. Consistently, it is either grey aliens, or sometimes they are grey aliens with lizard kind of raptor green looking aliens supervising in the background. They do a bunch of tests and then send the person back down again. Some of the people have reported, like the Matrix, that they have had tracking things installed in them so that the UFOs could come and find them again later. If you have not had an experience with a UFO, you can more than likely count yourself lucky. More than likely you won't get the seduction one, and even if you did, you would probably feel bad about it. The UFOs are all over the place, all over the earth, and yet there is a funny thing with how observing things work. Now, this all gets easier with trust. I trust that most of the time, most of my fellow human beings are honest, because most of the time I'm an honest human being. Now, if you believe everyone is lying, then yes, you can easily dismiss what all of your other fellow humans beings, so the other human beings have said. For instance, because you'll believe that they're also lying.
And this is really interesting, Dave. What are the percentages here? Again, you have to go back to percentages, right? Unless you're mentally ill or you crave attention, and I mean there are people like that. Okay, I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but for the most part, there are no percentages for anyone stepping forward and admitting to any of this, especially if there's physical contact, right? Because that's the fastest thing into the nut house for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all the pilots, military pilots, otherwise anyone in the military as well, generally speaking, that has these encounters and makes a report. It has usually a career that doesn't go much further than it had already.
Well, that's the end of that, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So there are no percentages in actually coming forward. So I'm astounded, Dave, that people are coming forward, because there's no upside at all. If
No.
you're a regular person, there's no upside for you here, right? And I'm watching a lot of documentaries, obviously, and I've read a lot of books, but it's usually the documentaries I find more compelling, or even talking to people. Just face to face that I find compelling, because telling me makes absolutely no difference to anyone. But I mean, you can tell me whatever you like, but it's not going to lead to your fame or wealth or anything like that. It doesn't do anything for you. Or even being on YouTube, right? Or having or making a documentary and speaking to the person making the documentary again, it's not going to make you famous or rich.
No,
It's quite the opposite.
Yes.
Quite the opposite. In fact, if you look at David Icke or others, they were ridiculed when they came out with the things that they said. I'm not saying that David Icke is an experiencer, but his case is probably the most pertinent, because he was completely ridiculed when he had his sort of inside moment. You know, when he sort of a bit of a break, if you will. But he came out of it the stronger. He said he needed that to be able to disassociate himself from all the other people, to be able to say the things he does say, right? But my point is, there are no percentages. There simply aren't any percentages in coming forward and saying this. And people do, though, Dave. They still do that. And we have physical evidence at times. There are things that are in people's bodies. That's the thing. There are radiation burns, for want of a better word. There are other scars. Okay? It's a thing. It's there. It happens. I myself had two experiences, I think only two, of what you would probably call sleep paralysis. Okay? Now, sleep paralysis is explained away as being you're in a state of sleep, just about to wake, but you're still dreaming, and you dream that you can't move your body. But, you're actually still sleeping, so that's why you can't move your body, and then you subsequently do wake up, and you're awake now. Now, I know for a fact that I was not sleeping, right? Because I wasn't. And I know when I'm in a dream state, and I know when I'm awake, because my dreams are they're not hyper-realistic, like maybe most people's are, but mine aren't. And I know when I'm awake, and I know when I'm awake, and I know when I couldn't move, and then it took all of my willpower, and you really have to dig deep for me to be able to move. And I was in a room, I was living in, where was it? West Street in Crow's Nest, in an upstairs bedroom, and in the corner of my room I could see this dark shadow moving. And as soon as I had regained control of my body, if you will, it fled into the corner, into more shadows, and that was it. That was the only time I actually saw an entity. I had sleep paralysis one other time, but I didn't see an entity. I felt the presence, but I didn't see anything. Okay, so yes, I mean, you can label me insane. That's okay. I know what I experienced. I know what I know, and I know that what Dave feels experienced. He has no percentages in telling me if it weren't true. He's got no percentages in telling anyone else, for that matter. In fact, all he faced when he told people, in fact, when he published his book, was he was told, "Now you're wrong. Your experiences are in fact incorrect."
That's exactly what happened. I was wrong. Good on you. Yeah, I know, right? That's okay. Were you the person saying it to me? I just said, were you there?
Yeah.
No, I wasn't. Exactly. But you're wrong. Okay. So and the only reason I published it was because to make myself feel better in my own skin, to be honest. So there isn't fame. There's no fortune. There's just absolutely no fortune in doing it. I had to do it for myself, and there you go. But Meki, that's the thing, right? So when someone tells you about their experience, because it happens now more often than not that people will tell me about paranormal experiences. I know that they tell you too. There's nothing in it for them, right? Why tell you?
No, not at all. In fact, a number of times, certainly, people have said, "Well, I'm happy for you to tell the story. Don't mention my name. Don't tell anyone where you heard it." Okay. Now, I mean, again, it's what this impressed me. Why would anyone want to impress me with anything, for that matter? It doesn't make any sense from that point of view. Will some people lie? I'm sure some people will lie. Okay, that's cool. I get it. But again, only one story has to be true. Only one out of all the stories, out of all the things that happen in the world, only one has to be true for us to know that things aren't quite the way they seem. Okay, we go on here with a very interesting analogy, which I will sort of expand upon just a little. So most ants will never see a human being. Now let me qualify that. Most ants in the middle of a forest that have a little, like a little ant nest, quite large sometimes, they will never see a human being. Okay. In an uninhabited forest full of ants, most ants in their lifetime would never ever lay eyes on us. In fact, it would be very rare in something like an uninhabited forest for a human being to be seen by any ants, right? Out of all of the ants, perhaps only 1 out of 1,000 that exist, if not less, maybe 1 out of 100,000 would see a human being in their lifetime. But take it one step further before I go on with the ant analogy here. Ants can't track us. They're aware, and this is actually a really good example. I want to run with this for a little while, Dave. Think about it this way. Ants can detect things we do. So we step onto an ant's nest, we step into the street, we step on them, we spill water on them, we just and most of the time our interactions with ants are completely unbeknown to us. We just happen to move through their life. But they have no capacity to track us or to understand what just stepped on them, or what stepped onto the ant's nest, or what stepped onto the ant's street, or what dropped water, or anything else for that matter on them. Sometimes
acts of God, Meki.
Acts of, there you go. Sometimes we drop fruit or sugar or whatever, and they might go, "Oh, there's sugar here. Where'd that come from? Let's eat it." The only ant, which is not really an ant, in the world that can track us, that can see us,
jumping jacks.
And Dave told me about those when we went out to some interesting sites in the bush. I had not known about jumping jacks, but jumping jacks, and I can tell you, I know this because there was this one jumping jack, which is quite sizable, by the way. They're not small ants, right? It tracked me. It looked at me. "What are you doing, buddy? Don't step on me. I don't know what you're doing, but I'm watching you." That was the kind of thing I got. And then there used to be wasps that I guess lost their wings and changed into earth-dwelling.
They decided the flying wasn't really their thing. So
correct.
And because they retain a wasp sting, that's how we can check it. So Meki, that's right. So if the majority of ants can't track us, and except for this one species that happens to live in my house as well, what's the story here then?
Well, so because they can't perceive of us, they can only perceive of the things that affect their environment. So what I mean by that is, so a lot of the phenomena that are associated with UFO activity or other things like that are the results those things have in our physical world. And I'm including the lights here. I'm including, mutilations of cattle here. I'm including skinwalker range phenomena here. A whole spectrum of phenomena which we can perceive. We can see the outcome of an interaction that we don't understand. But we don't understand what caused it. We don't understand the agency behind it. We can see something happen. We can experience the reality of it, just like an ant can experience the reality of us stepping onto an ant's nest. Yeah. Oh, well, my nest looks pretty destroyed. I have no idea what happened, but clearly there's a physical thing that happened here. And, but how? What? Well, so I run around crazy looking for an answer, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's us. That's us. For the most part, when it comes to the UFO and similar, and I think they're all related, by the way, supernatural phenomena, we don't understand the agency behind it. We can see and experience the effect it has on our world. What we cannot do is understand the greater context. Oh, there was a guy that was walking down the street to buy some milk to put in the cereal because he has to get to work. That's the context of me stepping on an anthill. The ants have zero chance of ever comprehending that. And I think we're in a similar boat here when it comes to some of these phenomena.
Nice
because
analogy.
I believe, right? You know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
I believe that we're dealing with multidimensional phenomena, especially if you look at the Skinwalker Ranch and other things like that. People disappearing or reappearing, right? And confusion, memory loss, yeah? The strange marks on the body, experiences of out of body, or there's a raft of experiences, and I think our mind closes it in a framework it can deal with. It can deal with it, right? It can couch it into terms that it can then handle, and this is where we really are. So I believe, right, it makes sense to look at ourselves as ants in this relation, right, in this relationship with the unknown, because we don't understand, and maybe we cannot understand the greater agency at play here, because we simply aren't equipped to do so. I mean, ants, for all their formidable powers and organization and even culture, right? I mean, they're growing mushrooms, for crying out loud.
Mm-hmm.
They've got farm animals, right? Mm-hmm. If we took these little lice, or the aphids, yeah. If we took them and started pulling the legs off them, right, and left them on the leaf, because that's what we do, right? Because we're just human beings and we're full of crazy. Then the ants will go, hey, who pulled all the legs out of my aphids? It doesn't make any sense.
Cattle
mutilation. Why would you do that? Right? Well, it is, right? So, anyway, my point here is that we have the wrong frame of reference. We are not the yardstick of the universe. Human beings, that is. We are not the yardstick of the universe. Okay, that's why I like the ant analogy here. Look, trust in human beings. I think it's important to understand that there really are no percentages, Dave. Right? I mean, let's talk about trust. Let's take a couple of paragraphs because I think it's quite good. If you want to just take it from do you trust your fellow human beings?
As it goes in the UFOs, most people in the world have not seen a UFO before. Most have not seen a USO, for that matter. However, there are people who have seen UFOs and USOs a bunch of times. There are people who have flown in them. There are people who have been abducted by them. There are farmers who have had their cows mutilated. There are people who have had family members and friends hurt and killed, then missing by UFOs. There are plenty of stories of ladies looking for their children who have been abducted and taken by UFOs. Just because it hasn't happened to you, you can feel really grateful for that, by the way. In fact, I would be perfectly happy to never see one in my whole life, says the writer of this article. I have never seen a UFO or USO, says the writer, and I would be perfectly happy to keep it that way. Although, if I go back to the mothership at some point, I will remember what I said. The point is, Do you trust your fellow human beings that they are doing their best, just like you are, to tell you honestly what they have seen most of the time? Meki.
Then a few of your fellow humans are sick and will make up stories to get attention. Sure, a few of your fellow human beings might lie to get attention, but wouldn't you think they would lie about something besides an alien abduction? I wouldn't think so. Some of them might lie. I'm sure there's some false accounts of UFOs and USO reports. Okay. I mean, I can't really picture, says the author here, that being the kind of thing that I would want to make up. I would rather make some more, down-to-earth gossip, to be honest. Again, the writer says. The things the writer has lied about, are pretty down-to-earth and boring. And he feels, or she for that matter, that that's how most people lie. Down-to-earth and boring, not outrageous and fantastical, right? You lie to fit in, not to stand out. And I think that's true. People lie to fit in, not to stand out. But he figures a few of our fellow human beings have lied, right? If government representatives have lied out of our best interest to keep the peace, out of not having people be afraid, it's understandable. It's understandable. Well, I mean, one can forgive anyone who has tried to cover up the UFO and USO sightings, right? There are lots of reasons why one might want to do that. And, up to date, one has to be okay with that because it happened, but secondly, there might have been a good reason. Okay? But there's a lot of evidence out there, and we all are grateful, I think, for having seen it. Ancient Aliens is one program, but there's tons of evidence out there. There's a show I watch now called Strange Evidence, which all it does, it puts together actual live footage from video cameras around the world. Some things are completely inexplicable. Completely inexplicable. But I want to say just this one thing here. If you're able to take a leap of faith, what you see can be so much greater than what you can see without the leap of faith. Right? Dave and I, we take a leap of faith every day. And I think all of us take a leap of faith every day by trusting our fellow human beings. Just you're trusting that they won't stab us in the eye as we go onto the train or the bus, right?
Yeah.
But it is. I mean, we're living in a trust society. We're living completely in a trust society. And occasionally we get lied to, okay? But we get lied to wherever we go. And sometimes you lie as well. The question, though, is, right, how much of the truth do we get to see? And how much of the truth do we think is being told to us, right? These are some things I want you guys to think about. I want to quickly do the Nimitz, Dave, and if you want to get started on that, please do. It's not that much, it's only a couple of pages. I think we can do it. Now, the Nimitz is a special case, and we'll let Dave explain to us why it's a special case.
Prior to the incident, early November 2004, the Ticonderoga class guided missile cruiser, the USS Princeton, part of the carrier Strike Group 11, had been tracking mysterious aircraft intermittently for 2 weeks on an advanced AN Spy 1B passive radar. Navy Chief Petty Officer NCOE 7 Kevin Day, stationed on the Princeton, recalls that he first noticed the clear radar traces of 8 to 10 objects around the 10th of November. They were travelling southwards in a loose, though fixed formation at 28,000 feet, which is 8.5 kilometres, in the immediate vicinity of Catalina Island, which is a hotbed, by the way, of sightings. He was startled by their slow speed of 100 knots, which is 190 kilometres an hour, or 120 miles per hour, but received confirmation of their presence from radar operators on other vessels. So his radar wasn't playing up. Regular observations were made of similar numbers of objects over following 6 days. The objects were also faintly detected by E-2C Hawkeye plane after Princeton sent them the coordinates. My goodness, this is confirmation, Meki.
It sure is, my friend. An unclassified and redacted summary of the event released by the US military, which is what this is. Okay. When the same event occurred again around 9:30 PST, Pacific Standard Time, on November 14, 2004, an operations officer aboard Princeton contacted 2 airborne U.S. Navy Boeing FA-18EF Super Hornets from the USS Nimitz, flying a combat exercise at the time. The aircraft were 2-seat variants, and each pilot was accompanied by a Weapons Systems Officer, WSO. The lead Super Hornet was piloted by Commander David Fravor, commanding officer of Strike Fighter Squadron 41. The second fighter, flying as wingman, included Lieutenant Commander Jim Slate as one of the 2 officers aboard. Princeton's radio operator Kevin Day directly instructed the pilots to change their course and investigate the unidentified radar spot observed by the Princeton's own radar. This was done to determine if the objects, the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable. This was done to determine if the objects posed any collision danger to an upcoming air defense exercise. A radio operator on Princeton, however, asked the pilots if they were carrying operational weapons, and the pilots replied that they were not, so they weren't armed. The weather conditions for that day showed excellent visibility with a blue sky, no cloud cover, and a calm sea. With the jet fighters arrived on site, the crew of 4 saw nothing in the air nor on their radar. On the Princeton's radar, however, it was noticed that the object now dropped from 28,000 feet to near sea level in less than a second. That, by the way, would kill anyone. It was on a human plane, just to let you know, right? If you dropped 28,000 feet in a second, the G-forces would just turn you to catch up.
But both sets of G-forces, the initial and the ceasing.
Oh, 100%. Catch up. As the pilots looked down at the sea, they noticed a turbulent oval area of churning water with foam and frothy waves the size of a Boeing 737 airplane, with a smoother area of lighter color at the center, as if the waves were breaking over something just under the surface. By the way, this kind of churning water with foam and frothy waves is a very common Bermuda Triangle phenomenon. Okay? A few seconds later, they noticed an unusual object hovering with erratic movements 50 feet, about 15 meters, above the churning water. Both Fravor and Slate later described the object as a large, bright, white tic-tac, 30 to 46 feet, which is about 9 to about 14 meters long, with no windshield, nor porthole, no wing, nor empennage, and no visible engine, nor exhaust plume. Fravor began a circular descent to approach the object. As Fravor further descended, he reported that the object began ascending along a curved path, maintaining some distance from the F-18, mirroring its trajectory in opposite circles. Fravor then made a more aggressive maneuver, plunging his fighter to aim below the object, but at this point the UFO accelerated and went out of sight in less than 2 seconds, leaving the pilots pretty weirded out. Subsequently, the 2 fighter jets began a new course to the Combat Air Patrol, which is a CAP, rendezvous point. Within seconds, the Princeton radioed the jets that the radar target had reappeared 60 miles, about 97 kilometers, away at this predetermined rendezvous point. According to popular mechanics, a physical object would have had to move greater than 2,400 miles per hour, or 3,900 kilometers per hour, to cover the distance in the reported time. 2 other jets went to investigate the new radar location, but by the time the Super Hornets arrived, the object had already disappeared. Both F-18s then returned to the Nimitz. Commander Fravor reflected on his sightings the following: "I have no idea what I saw. It had no plumes, wings, or rotors, and outran our F-18s. But I want to fly one."
Yeah, absolutely. So after the return, this is infrared footage, after the return of the first team to the Nimitz, the second team took off at approximately 12 PST. This time equipped with an advanced infrared camera, the FLIR pod. This camera recorded an invasive identified aerial system on video publicly released by the Pentagon on the 16th of December 2017, alongside the revelation of the funding of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. This footage is known as the 2004 USS Nimitz FLIR-1 video. It officially sheds some light on a decade-old story that was largely unknown, except for a 2015 second-hand story on FrightSweeper.com that Fightersweep.com, that in fact, in spite of providing many details, remained unconfirmed at that time. A second infrared footage, known as the Gimbal, Gimbal video, has been released by the Pentagon alongside with the 2004 FLIR 1 footage. Although the media often present the two videos together to illustrate the 2004 Nimitz UFO incident, the Gimbal video is unrelated, filmed at the east coast of the United States at an unknown date. Got to remember that when you're joining those together.
You know why I wanted this here, right? I mean,
yeah.
This, and it's funny. It's the Nimitz because it's actually a movie that the Nimitz was central to, where the Nimitz traveled back in time to World War II. Kirk Douglas was the captain of the Nimitz, I think, in that movie. I think it's called. I can't remember what it was called, but it was a great movie. If you ever get to watch it, watch it. It was a 1980s movie.
The Gimbal
the Nimitz
video.
Was, traveled back in time. It's the all-star cast back in the 80s. Now, this is clearly an account you cannot deny. I mean, the Pentagon has released the footage, has released the infrared footage, for crying out loud, as well as the redacted summary of the events that was released by the U.S. military. Okay, so we know the name of the pilots, we know what the pilots said afterwards, and we know some of the physical impossibilities that our pilots, I'm talking about, the human pilots confronted. I mean, 3,900 kilometers per hour. And there's the music. Come back next week.
and also stay tuned for Jer Bear's roundtable. Dial in, call in, and talk to him. It's a great show. You'll have a great time. See you next week.